have the pledge be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Granite Elementary Principal Alcina Celine. And then Principal Celine will give us some highlights from Granite Elementary.
Good evening. Please stand and get ready for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for having me this evening. I am always grateful to have the opportunity to talk about Granite and Gold Miner's Daughter. We have exceptional schools and we have a lot to be proud of. Currently, Granite has 362 students. 29 of those are in our extended core classes, which are, I think, all of my community would say, one of the best parts of Granite. We also have 5 of those students that are up at Gold Miners right now, with more coming as winter comes. We have a very long list of things to be proud of, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of those tonight. We have a very active SCC and PTA. Our parents really show up for kids and work hard to give them high quality education opportunities. Our PTA sponsors class reading parties once per month during recess. We have a parent volunteer who's starting a before school music class and will be participating in booklets. And we have a speech and debate team at Granite as well. Gold Miner's Daughter also has an incredibly supportive community. Our students there truly have an immersive experience in learning and connecting with nature. They've recently been writing essays on the ecology of Alta and comparing the ecology of Alta to the ecology of a desert. Their morning meetings include a walk outside and observing nature and asking questions as a scientist would. The most notable trait about Granite's school community is our dedication to inclusion. All of our teachers, and I really mean all of our teachers, make sure that our extended core students are included for morning meetings, recess, every grade activity, lunches, and more. Our staff eagerly mainstreams our extended core students as much as possible, and teachers clamor to welcome students into their classroom. Students work hard to have opportunities to play and work with their extended core peers, and without prompting, our Grizzlies include their extended core peers in play and activities and at recess and morning meetings. I've actually heard teachers arguing that it was their turn to have a student from ECC because they love them so much. Our teachers have been working very hard this year to incorporate 95% core and wonders into their classrooms. We have been so fortunate to have a school subpool, which has allowed me to offer my teachers a half day of planning per unit this year for collaboration time and giving them time to dig into those programs and make sure that they're meeting their students' needs and contextualizing those tools to their classrooms and to the standards that they know their students need to prioritize. I actually got to try to teach some lessons in a few classrooms as well, and we are all steadily becoming more comfortable with those things. I am very proud of my teachers for the way that they've tackled this challenge and opened their rooms to feedback and teamwork. So far this year, our greatest challenge has been staffing. I'm certain that all of my colleagues would share a sentiment similar to that. I am still in need of 3 ECC paraprofessionals, a brain booster tech, and an MTSS assistant. We have been very lucky to be able to get substitutes for these positions almost always, because we have fantastic support from the district subpool and we have a wonderful community of emergency subs. But the shortage does tax our systems and our staff. We have quite a few huge celebrations in our end of year testing, particularly our 5th grade rise scores were very noteworthy this last year. And I think those are the best highlights I have for Granite this evening and Gold Miners.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much, principals. And will you please extend our appreciation to your faculty and staff and the students there at Granite Elementary for all the great work that you're doing every day. And it sounds like even oftentimes shorthanded, and appreciate that. And appreciate your leadership there.
Thank you. I'll
Thank
pass
you.
that on.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we'll turn time over to Jeff Haney from the Communications Department for some recognitions.
President Tingy, thank you for this time to recognize the achievements of students, faculty, and staff in Canyons District. Those who are mentioned tonight will receive a letter of recognition from the board and the superintendent. We'll start our recognitions tonight by honoring the students at 3 Canyons District schools who would have advanced in the competition to become 2023 National Merit Scholars. You see here that 20 Canyons District seniors have earned semifinalist status in the fiercely competitive 2023 scholarship cycle in the National Merit Scholarship Competition. Hillcrest High School even boasts 13 semifinalists, placing it in the top 3 statewide for fielding the most semifinalists in this cycle. Now, semifinalists are outstanding scholars and leaders and are active in their school communities, in activities, athletics, arts, and they also participate in a lot of community service. The National Merit Scholarship semifinalists from Canyons District are from Hillcrest: James Abbott, Lauren Andrade, Michael Chen, Campbell Hone, Andrew Liu, Ryan Liu, Samuel Martin, Priyanka Matthews, Sophia Moenzavari, Sawit Paratala, Amber Parker, Naoto Robinson, and Jaya Shavari Shankar. From Corner Canyon, Ian Colton, Ashton Coombs, Andrew Kolda, Caitlin Madsen, Michael Pond, and Dawson Walker, and from Alta High School, Serena Jefferson. So congratulations to the semifinalists for National Merit Scholars from Canyon School District. We wish them luck in the next stage of the competition. Now, the next student finished among the very best in the world on an AP test last spring. Now, we're still doing a little bit of research, but we may have had the very first Canyon student to earn an absolute perfect score on the advanced placement test for Spanish language and culture. This week, we found out that Karen Campik's May exam results were so superior that they fell into a rather select category. Now, as many people know, AP exams are scored on a scale of 1 to 5. Now, she not only scored a top score of 5, but is one of only 63 students in the world to earn every point possible on the AP Spanish language and culture exam. She received the maximum score on every portion of that test. That would be hard to do. So this may well be the very first designation of its kind in Canyons District. We'll do a little bit of digging into that, but regardless, it's certainly worth applauding. So congratulations to this beat digger, and a big thanks to her teachers and her families for supporting her. Now, our very next honoree usually is with us. Tonight, she's paying attention to a family issue. She's a storyteller extraordinaire in Canyon School District. Kirsten Stewart, who's the Associate Director of Communications in Canyon School District, and who is spearheading our strategic enrollment and marketing initiative, is the new president-elect of the Utah School Public Relations Association. It's a chapter of the national organizations. So it is an organization that is made up of all the communications professionals in all the school districts in Utah. So congratulations to Kirsten for being selected to this position. We'll have no doubt she'll provide amazing leadership on a state level in our effort to tell public education stories of success, achievement, community engagement, and customer service. Now, the next honorees are the Wizards of Canyon School District. They work their magic on our high-tech gadgets. Do we know how our gadgets work? No, we do not. But do they? Thank goodness, yes. So we can go ahead and give them a virtual high five for the many times they have helped solve our technical glitches and for all the systems that they build, maintain, improve, and innovate. Today is National IT Professionals Day, and we recognize the invaluable IT experts who keep our computer systems running smoothly, even when, and probably because of, some of us who have a lot of errors. It's a user error situation there. Now we forget our passwords, we accidentally delete our files. If you're like me, I spill coffee on my keyboard, and they are always there to help. So on this National IT Professionals Day, we thank the 75 IT pros in Canyons District who do amazing behind the scenes wizardry as field techs, engineers, help desk experts, business support developers, web managers, in-house development team members, tech specialists, and the department administration. Now, as a reminder, this Thursday is the Canyons Education Foundation's annual golf tournament. It'll be at Wasatch State Park Golf Course. Now, Mont reminds me, we've had great weather every year. Is that right? Fantastic. So if the forecast holds, we'll have amazing weather for the golf tournament that we hold every year to raise money for schools, students, and teachers. Our golf tournament this year is sold out. Now all the money goes straight back to Canyons District, and we are so happy that so many people have turned out to support the Canyons Education Foundation in this major fundraiser. So thank you, President Tingey, for the time to honor those in the Canyon School District who have gone above and beyond. We turn the time back to you.
Thank you. It's so wonderful to hear the great achievements and recognize the significant contributions of folks throughout the district. We appreciate that. Next on the agenda is the patron comments, and I'll just read a few instructions first. While not required by law, the board often designates time in meetings to listen to the patrons of the district. Patron comment time is limited to residents and taxpayers of Canyons District, students and parents of students, and current employees of the district. Patrons may provide board members with written documents. These documents should be submitted to the board secretary over here at the meeting or emailed to the Office of Public Communications by noon of the day following board meeting. Time allotted this evening. We've had 2 patrons sign up to address the board, so they will each be given 3 minutes. It's the board's practice to listen and take notes during patron comments. The Board of Education does not discuss matters that are not on the meeting's agenda, nor engage in public comment on individual students to protect their privacy or employee issues. If a patron wants to comment on a district employee's character, professional competence, or mental or physical health, the board requests that those comments be submitted to the board in writing. However, if the patron determines to verbally comment on those personnel issues, the comments need to be civil and refrain from personal attacks, insults, defamatory, or slanderous comments about an individual. The Board of Education would like to make it clear that critical race theory is not part of the curriculum being used by Canyon School District. There are no plans to incorporate it into the curriculum or instruction in Canyon schools. The Board of Education values input on all sides of issues. To maintain decorum and respect, we ask that those in attendance refrain from applause or other types of demonstrations during the patron comment time, as well as throughout the meeting. Thank you for letting me read that. And first to address the board is Andrew Morgan, who will be followed by Jen Stark.
It says okay, it's on. It says turn on the microphone. Hi, good evening. My name's Andrew Morgan. I'm going to try to not get emotional when I talk about my kids. So I may need every bit of those 3 minutes. So sorry about that. We moved to Utah 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and live in District 6. However, over the past, with the last 3 students that we've had, we sent them to Eastmont outside of our district. And my youngest is currently in the 6th grade. We chose Eastmont mainly because really what's important to us is the school district has a gem of a school when it comes to focusing on a culture of respect and focusing on the entire student, the whole student. And the administration and staff have really developed a unique culture that has the proverbial it. And each of the students that we've come across have felt safe, cared for, supported, and there's a culture of safety there that students can really be prepared to take on the academic challenges that each grade brings. And so my wife and I also have highly recommended, as we talked to other people in the community, we've recommended Eastmont over the years when asked about different middle schools to attend, and why would you not stay in your district and things like that. And like I said, Eastmont's been a fantastic school when it comes to the culture, which is really important to us. I was talking to Mr. Haney a few minutes ago, and was shocked to find out that when Canyons first started, that the district formed itself in, you say 6 weeks? 6 weeks. That's amazing. Well, what we've seen at Eastmont, unfortunately, is just a continual attendance drop over the last several years, as well as longstanding facility issues. There's a flood, I guess, 7 years ago, and some of the gym floor is still really gummy, and it's just not kept up with the beautiful buildings and remodeling and things like that that's happened over the last several years within the Canyon School District. And by the way, the district should be commended on the facilities. I mean, they are truly amazing. I have students and family all over a lot of the different high schools. I'm in and out of the facilities all the time, and a lot of them are beautiful. Also, because of the drop in attendance, it's also negatively impacted over the years social and extracurricular opportunities for each of my students. They've decreased at an increasing rate to now my daughter, who is wanting to get into is wanting to get into some extracurricular activities with acting. Those are quickly going away just because of staff issues, again related to population in the area. So I own a company. I have a staff of about 25 in 3 states. Culture, if you can't tell, is very important to me, and so I watch closely the culture in my organization and watch the culture within those areas that are important to me as well. And unfortunately, I mean, I've seen a decrease in and have growing concerns that I've seen among faculty and students because of several things with the facilities, namely with the facilities and also with the as a result of the population. And I know there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, and I've had an opportunity to speak with Ms. Oakes and Mr. Wrigley not too long ago at a candidate event. So thank you for your time with that. But questions even from the kids are asking, are things going to get fixed? Is Eastmont going to become the next Edgemont, where we're merging schools and things like that? And just looking at the facts of it all. Have I run out of time?
Yes, if you could just conclude, and then
okay.
And you're welcome to leave your written remarks.
Okay. Well, and finally, I guess that's it, is that Canyons has certainly showed a history of excellence with facilities and with the culture and with the school. And so, like I said, I had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Wrigley and Ms. Oakes. And so I just wanted to petition the rest of the school board to please take some action and communicate that to the faculty and staff to help support them and their needs within their culture. So sorry for going over, but thanks for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Jen Stark.
Members of the board, I'm hoping, you've had time to read and discuss my letter. Jeez, I didn't make it very far. I'm here to double down on the issues addressed. I know I have only 3 minutes, but I want you to understand the sobering reality that there are teachers that are just barely hanging on right now. It's very simple. We are expected to do too much day in and day out. I didn't want to use up my time reading the list I included in my letter that was lengthy, but because that's only part of the problem, but I will restate this. In the last 3 years, we elementary educators have been given 4 new curriculum programs to teach. Science came the year after science came the year after COVID. Last year it was letters, and this year it's letters, 95%, and wonders. 4 new things in 3 years after a pandemic. We are given 1 teacher prep day this school year. So we have less days to plan, collaborate, and prepare than the past 3 years since COVID. Yes, we're hardworking, innovative, and great at solving problems as teachers, but what makes us impactful is our love of learning, our flexibility, and our natural talent to connect with kids. I'd like to share something personal. I have dreamed of being a teacher since I was 5 years old. I used to line up my stuffed animals, dolls, my baby brother, and teach them all the things I knew about life as a 5-year-old on my art easel. There was never a doubt in my mind that that's what I was meant to do. The classroom has always felt like home to me, and I know I'm not alone in that feeling, nor am I alone in the feeling now of being burnt out. Canyons has phenomenal teachers. I'm proud to be a part of this district, but we don't feel valued or appreciated when our hard work is rewarded with more work and less time. Teachers all over are going to go elsewhere if something doesn't change. We're at a breaking point this year, and I think that needs to be acknowledged and remedied. I'm realistic. I know Wonders isn't going anywhere, that we're not all gonna all of a sudden have 4-day school weeks, or that we'll get raises for the extra time we're putting in that would fill a timesheet each week. So instead, for now, I'm asking that in the 30 minutes before school and the 30 minutes after our contract hours we are paid for, that you tell us what 2 to 3 things on that long list are non-negotiables. What is the most important? What can you let go of? What can we not be persuaded to think that we have to do in that time? Can you remove some of the optional things that it seems this district has chosen to ask of its teachers while others have not? Please refrain from adding more to our list and instead answer these questions about what is most impactful for these kids, or trust us to do it without questioning why we didn't do it all in 30 minutes before and after school. Because we will need to be able to choose between writing learning objectives on the board and doing a Canvas course assignment, or making that meaningful parent phone call, collaborating with teammates, and discussing behavior solutions. I affirm that the latter is going to make our kids' day better when they show up the following morning. This is not sustainable, and I implore Canyons to be the solutions-driven district that I believe it is, and that I'm proud to be a part of, by showing its teachers that they are valued and their voices are being heard. Please prove that CSD is the place to be.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our patron comments, and we appreciate those that have come and spoken to us and shared their thoughts and experiences and on these very important matters. Okay, next is the consent agenda items. I will ask for a motion, and in making that motion, will you please read each of the items listed under the consent agenda?
I'll go ahead and make that motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda, which includes item A, approval of minutes for September 6, 2022. Item B, approval of hire and termination reports. Item C, approval of purchasing bids. Item D, approval of student overnight travel. Item E, approval of August financial reports. Item F, approval of Peruvian Park virtual days for move to new building. Item G, approval of memorandum of understanding between Canyon School District and Alpine School District regarding Suncrest busing. Item H, approval of TSSP amendment for Granite Elementary. Item I, approval of TSSP amendment for Indian Hills Middle School. And item J, approval of Canyons Education Foundation Board.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion to this motion? Mrs.
I do
Schill?
have some discussion if possible. So I'm just wondering, on the purchasing bids, there is a bid to get let's see what it is. Security camera upgrades to a list of the elementary schools. And I was just kind of wondering, why were those chosen and what was the reasoning behind that?
I believe that question should, Mr. Wilcox can answer that. Mr. Wilcox.
Very good question. For the last several years, we've been converting our schools from an analog security system to a digital system called Milestone. It's on all our buses as well. These are the last 8 schools that are still on the old Pelco analog system. So this will give each school now on the Milestone system. Every other school, every other elementary, and all the secondary schools are currently on the Milestone. This puts all these last 8 schools on this system. This will give each school at least 10 cameras as well with the new system that Ryan Jakeman's gone out and pointed them out with the principals. Our idea is over time, we'd like to get more cameras in. We'd like about 25-ish, give or take, depending on the size of the building on each elementary school, but this gives us a pretty good start in converting over to the new Milestone system. So any other questions on that?
Does that answer your
Yeah,
question,
thank
Mrs.
you
Schill?
so much. I was just wondering about that one. So thank you for that detail.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion for this motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda under new business items is the annual open meetings training. And this is a training that is required by state statute for us every year. And I'd like to turn time over to Dan Harper, General Legal Counsel, and thank him for training us on this matter.
Well, thank you, President Ting. It's wonderful to be here. I want to apologize for missing the last board meeting, but I had a wonderful opportunity to return to Italy after 40 years. It was a marvelous trip. Some of the highlights was returning to the Sistine Chapel after they had restored Michelangelo's paintings. And also I'd been reading about Brunelleschi's cupola that he built for the Duomo in Florence and was able to go there and climb and appreciate that. And both of them inside have quite dramatic depictions of what Italians refer to as inferno. And it made me think of a lawyer joke. So there was this lawyer and he's in the hospital and he wakes up from surgery and he turns to the nurse and he says, why are the blinds drawn? And the nurse says, oh, well, there's a fire across the street and we didn't want you to think you died during this operation. There you go. Inferno, you know. Yeah. All right. There we go. Okay. As President Tingy indicated, each year by statute, she's required to see that the board is trained on the Utah Open and Public Meeting Act. And I just want to compliment this board for how well they do in making sure that we follow the statutes as it pertains to this law. So this is a statute that is a requirement for the training. And the purposes of the Open and Public Meeting Act is that you take your actions openly and you ensure that deliberations allow for an open public process. And this board does a wonderful job doing that. One of the key definitions, of course, is what is a meeting? A meeting is when this group is convened and there is a quorum present. So 4 or more of the board members are there. And the purpose of that meeting is to discuss or act upon matters over which you have jurisdiction. So probably just as important is what is not a meeting. Any chance or social meeting of members of the board, even if technically there would be a quorum, would not be a meeting with these qualifications. 1, no public funds are appropriated for expenditure, and you're there convened solely for administrative or operational matters for which no formal action by the body is required, or would not come before the public body for discussion or action. So, discussing during a meeting, no texts during a board meeting, no emails during a board meeting, because you are supposed to do your deliberations publicly, so that everyone can hear that. However, 52-4-210 clarifies that when you're not in board meeting, you can engage in electronic communications. So reminders that your emails to each other are allowed, but you need to be careful when responding to those so that you're not engaging in discussions about items that might come before you on which you would possibly take action. And also, it's important to remember that emails are subject to grammar. Also, texts may be subject to grammar. As I was reviewing, there is a records committee case, Henderson v. San Juan County. This is a 2019 case where Ms. Henderson requested texts from Commissioner Maryboy. The San Juan County said, no, we don't have them. And they said, well, actually, we saw this individual engaging in texting during the meeting. And the records committee pointed out that since text could have been created by the commissioner in his public capacity as a commissioner for the county, as opposed to his capacity as a private individual, the text messages may be considered records under grammar. So with that in mind, I kind of looked, oh, this is the old one. All right, I'll just tell you that under retention, because that's one of the key facts of grammar, is as you may be aware, all of your emails are retained by the district. They are kept on the district server and kept. So even if you did accidentally delete your emails on your computer, they'd still be saved and archived by the district. However, texts on your phones are not. So what is the retention for text? Well, we don't have anything per se in our retention schedule with the state, but so the default one is texts generally are considered transitory correspondence. So what that means is when you have a text with someone, maybe it is a constituent, and they text you on your phone about a matter or something, and you responded to them. You don't have to retain it. Once you have resolved that issue, that communication is done, you can delete it and it's fine there. So unlike the emails that are kept permanently, text on your phone, as soon as you're done with that issue, you can go ahead and delete that. It would be considered a transitory correspondence there. All right. Public notice. We know that the public is notified of these meetings. One is an annual meeting schedule that is posted here at the district office and also on the Utah Public Notice website. And then each individual meeting, the agenda is provided 24 hours in advance with the date, time, location. That's also at our principal office and on the website. Emergency meetings can occur. You have to give the best notice practicable of the date, time, and place of the meeting. It's only held because of unforeseen circumstances considered an emergency or urgent nature. And you have to try and notify the public to the best extent you can. Agenda requirements, we have to provide reasonable specificity so the public has an idea of what's going on at the next meeting. So as today, if they want to come and comment on items related to what you may be discussing, they can come and provide that input. They're supposed to be listed separately. And also non-agenda topics could be discussed if a patron came and talked about something that wasn't on the agenda. If at the discretion of the chair, President Tingy, that they wanted to discuss those, but no final action is taken, you could, if it isn't on the agenda for that meeting, have a brief discussion. Of course, the important part is keeping minutes, which we have all on our website, both the recording and the minutes. The recordings are posted within 3 days, and those are complete unedited recordings of the meeting. And then the minutes need to be created within 30 days of the meeting. They include the date, time, and place, name of the members present, the substance of all matters discussed by the board, the votes taken, and any information requested by members of the board to be part of the minutes. So if there's something that you specifically want in the minutes, you can request that. But what this board does, it includes both a link to the recording. So even if they look at the minutes and they weren't clear on, oh, I don't know exactly what had happened, on the website, there's the link to the recording so they can go and listen and hear the entire discussion there. So we've always covered what has happened in board meeting. The written minutes are retained indefinitely. It's a nice feature. You can go on the website and find all of the minutes from all Canyon School District board meetings. Just briefly, closed meetings. We know that quorum must be present to go into closed meeting. There has to be 2/3 of the board to vote to go into closed session. The reasons for doing so need to be on the record and disclose the location where that closed meeting is taking place. Some of the purposes is the discussion of character, professional competence, physical or mental health of individuals, collective bargaining, security, pending or reasonably imminent litigation, investigations into allegations of criminal misconduct, and discussions of property that the district is considering purchasing or selling. All of those can occur in closed session. All of those are recorded with the exception of the discussion of character, physical, mental health, professional competence of an individual, or security matters. Instead, an affidavit is signed by the board president saying that that was what was discussed in that closed session there. Things you can do, you can't take final action in a close meeting. So even if you discuss something and decided to do that, you would go into open session and take the final votes. So they're on the record. And we now can have electronic meetings because we have a policy. And finally, what happens if someone violates the Open Meetings Act? It is a Class B misdemeanor with a fine of up to $2,500 and confinement in jail of no more than 6 months. If the court finds that there was a violation, could cure that. For example, if it was a closed session, that it would make that information available subsequently to the public. And also, we would be required to pay court costs and attorney's fees for whoever brought that. They have a short time to do so, 90 days after discovery of the violation or 30 days if it's a bond. There. Any questions on the exciting Open Meetings Act?
Anyone have, sorry, Mrs. Oakes?
This probably is going to sound facetious. I appreciate you going over this. It's a lot in it. It's a lot for every new board member to process. I'm just wondering how in the world we get the legislature on board with the same kind of rules. Wouldn't that be something? Anyway.
I think that's a question for someone else.
I know. And someday you and I can have a conversation about whether or not that exists in any other state. But I always appreciate you going over this because it's a tricky thing. A lot of people will come to us as board members and say, why don't you guys move faster? Why doesn't this happen more quickly? Or why doesn't this happen this way? And why can't you just turn on a dime? And it comes down to this and in many regards, because we should not, as a board, be making any movement or any discussion until we do it publicly, where all of our faces are plastered to YouTube. So it's an interesting dynamic, but I will say, I am proud of this board, and I'm proud of President Tingey in particular, and making sure that we behave above board on this. And I appreciate you keeping us on track on that too. So,
yes, I would concur. President Tingey and I have had many conversations on this act and making sure that the board follows it. She is very conscientious about seeing that the board does so.
Any other questions? Mrs. Neubauer? Right as you were going over text, I got a text from my son, are you picking me up from football? And I texted board meeting, Dad. So important to remember that you shouldn't be texting fellow board members or anyone that pertains to any of the conversation, but there are sometimes emergencies with families. And then if it were grandma, we would be clear.
That's a good clarification. Yes.
Thank you. Any other comments? I just want to thank our board for being very diligent and careful in this matter and recognizing that we work in the public eye, and we appreciate, there's a lot of provisions that we need to keep track of. And so thank you for helping us with that.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda is a policy update. I will turn time over to Mr. Jeff Christensen, Assistant Legal Counsel. There are, looks like 3 policies for which he'll present updates as a report from the policy committee. And I just want to thank Mr. Christensen for facilitating the work of the policy committee and for bringing the report to the board.
Thank you, President Tingey. Nothing more exciting than 2 presentations by a lawyer to be followed by one by an accountant. So I have, as you mentioned, a couple of policy updates for the board been recommended by the committee. The first 2 that I'll address deal with either Utah Administrative Code or state statute, and we're just trying to further align our policy manual with provisions that have been adopted by those bodies. So the policy that we're recommending is new, is Sanitation in Schools Integrated Pest Management Plan. In the Administrative Code for Health, they address that schools shall have an integrated pest management plan, and it should be written. And they also discuss that in that plan, it'll have policy language. We're recommending to the board that they adopt a policy that codifies this plan so that it can be in operation compliance with the rule and then further guide their practices. As the policy will be developed, there'll be an exhibit that is called the Integrated Pest Management Plan that outlines how they will go about organizing their committee as well as their procedures for reviewing our facilities for pest-related issues. So the policy itself defines integrated pest management, outlines the committee, and then also sets up the parameters for support training for IPM practices. The next policy is policy 530, open enrollment, school admissions, and school moratoriums. In this policy, we're just updating to align with Utah code regarding enrollment, documentation, and birth certificates. In our policy, we had previously language that dealt with if you didn't have reliable documentation, there was a procedure where you would eventually mail out documentation to the residents. And over time, there was a process that's been modified through this statutory legislative process last year. And we're just aligning with that. And in the memo, as well as the PowerPoint, it addresses that without that reliable proof, the district has an assigned team as outlined in statute that will assist with enrollment in the event we don't have that documentation. The final policy in the update is in our policy manual. We've gone through all of the sections, and one of the policies we inherited from Jordan School District dealt with community involvement in education. And this policy has primarily dealt with the Department of External Relations, and it was brought to the policy committee for an update. What we've done is revise the policy statement to focus on the duties and the functions of the Department of External Relations, focusing on community engagement. The policy committee is recommending a new title, and then the policy outlines their objectives, and its purpose is to align policy with our current practices as we engage with the community. There are two sections that deal with public engagement objectives, and then another section that deals with communication objectives. And the red line outlines some few adjustments we've made to really align with our current practice as we assist with receiving feedback from the community in a variety of formats, and then our communication objectives as we strategically communicate with our constituents, whether that be parents, government leaders, legislators, law enforcement, and otherwise. All of those are for first reading. No action this evening on the agenda, but the policy committee can receive feedback regarding these matters, and I can answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen. Board, any questions or feedback, comments on any of these? Okay. Are you all right if I ask, oh, Mr. Wrigley, did you have something?
Sorry, I think the policy said under number 3 was community, and it was different than the actual policy. The committee changed it to community engagement, and I think this has had a different name on there.
Yeah, in the current policy right now as it stands before the board takes action, it's community involvement in education, and our recommendation is that it be retitled community engagement, as the board hasn't taken action yet. It currently has the existing title.
So this is the existing, okay, I knew it was the existing policy, but I didn't know if you could write that down on the new one then. Sorry.
So as soon, once the board takes action, it'll be retitled, and the red line will then be updated.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Oh, Mrs. Nybauer?
And on that last attachment, red line policy 700-05, it does show the difference. It shows at the beginning community engagement.
Mrs. Schill?
So at least on my computer, where it says red line, I'm not seeing the red lines. So I don't know if I'm doing something wrong or if the right thing is not posted there.
I'll work with Cindy, our secretary, to be certain. And as we provided the documents to board docs, that may have been, I'm not certain, it may have been saved, but we had a red line and a clean version in our policy meeting discussion. So there's a number of elements that are redlined, and then it's some new language. So
And
we'll clarify that prior to our second read.
yeah, and they were both, I mean, the red lines are on there, they're posted on there. Sometimes, whether if you're looking at it on a tablet or a phone, you need to open it up in the application that it was created in to show the red line. So,
Yes, and I am on my computer because I've learned that already.
yeah, but even
Okay.
try and see if it gives you the option to open it up in Word, but it took me a little bit to figure that out, but
We'll clarify
I will
that
say
for-
that they are both posted on Board Docs. Is that
Yeah.
you might have to either download it or open in, select an open in. I think it's a Word document is what it is. So, okay. Any other questions on the policies? I'm just wondering, is the board interested in when these come back? Because like Mr. Christensen said, it's the first reading. When these come back for second reading, are you okay with at least those ones that are for compliance with statutory to come back on consent? Or would you like them to come with further discussion? And how about the one on community engagement? We're okay with that on consent? Any objection to that? Okay. All right. We will
you.
plan on that then. Thank you very much, Mr. Christensen.
Thanks, members of the board.
Okay, next is item 6C, bus study update. I will turn time over to Mr. Leon Wilcox, Business Administrator, and just express the board's appreciation to Mr. Wilcox for gathering and providing this information to us for our consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, President Tingy. Two lawyers and an accountant. That joke speaks for itself. And then the accountant will talk about busing. So we're further down. Last meeting, we had a discussion in the study session about a possible bus study. That presentation is still on Board Docs. If needed, we can refer to that and we can have Julie pull that up, but it is on Board Docs. Went a little bit different route this one based on some of the information you requested. So we'll go through this, and then if you have any topics you want to address on this again regarding the bus study, I want to just give you a flavor of the complexity regarding mainly high school busing. So right now, our high schools are full. We have 22 to 2,400 at Brighton, Corner Out, and Hillcrest right now. But we only run about 4 buses. You can see the buses that we run there, the number of regular ed buses. We do have more going to Hillcrest right now, about 10. The number of students assigned to each route varies greatly. We'll have anywhere from 100 to 150. We actually have a couple routes that are well over 200 kids assigned who can ride that bus. But we know that because of just the high school nature, you have all kinds of extracurricular activities. You have students who drive a lot, carpools, everything like that. We just, we get just, again, that 50 to 60 students on each route there. Because these buses go longer, to cover more area, more students, they take longer to run that route. It's usually around 30 to 35 minutes, whereas our elementary and middle schools are around 15 to 20 minutes. Our elementary and middle schools are very consistent throughout the year. We have the same number of kids basically ride every day. Whereas a high school will have, you'll have students who maybe do football or soccer in the fall, but then ride the bus in the spring. Sophomores who's turning that age of 15 to 16 who start driving later in the year. So it will vary quite a bit there that way in our ridership. One of the things that makes us unique in Canyons is our CTEC. We love our CTEC center, but so to get students to the CTEC, can they have 2 sessions, a morning session and an afternoon session, even though the afternoon session starts at 11:30. They have to have the kids at the school around 7 o'clock each day on the buses. Then one bus stays there and picks up all the students who go to the tech center. And so it will leave around 7:05, 7:10 from each school. Each school has a bus that goes right to the tech center. gets the students there around 7:20, 7:25. The tech center starts at 7:30 with their classes. Then it ends at 9. The first session ends at 9:55. Buses leave the tech center. Again, they have to wait 7 minutes after the final bell to leave the tech center, then go back to the 5 buses back to the 5 high schools. Then they'll turn around and do it again for the afternoon session. That starts at 11:30. Again, do that shuttle run, if you will, then back to the high schools just after 2:00. Again, a bus at each high school there. And you can see here is our tech center schedule again, 2 sessions, AM and PM. Right now we have 744 students there. Mornings, a few more in the morning and in the afternoon. Fall semester, a little bit more heavier than the spring semester. And that's mainly the CNA, EMT programs, and also the physical therapy one as well. So that's, something that is a big tentacle in our busing transportation for our high schools. Also, another one is trying to make sure we stay within that 990-hour rule that's currently waived. We know that's been waived the last couple years. Still waived. We don't know if it's going to come back. It may not. Right now we're on 178 calendar days. Again, if you remember a few years back, the legislature passed a bill where they can have 2 professional development days. So kids come to school 178 days. Elementary school bell times are basically 6 hours and 35 minutes, again, from bell to bell. A couple of them go 30 minutes. That equates to just around 1,000 hours for each of our elementary schools, depending on the lunchtime. The middle schools, you can see, they're around 6, they're a little bit longer. So a few more hours, getting closer to that 1,020 hours. Again, depending on lunchtime and passing time, based on the previous board rules, that's no longer in session. You should not count lunchtime and the passing time between classes. So that's something that we always watch. Our high schools are a little bit less than that. They range from 6 hours, 30 minutes to 6 hours and 50 minutes, depending on lunch. So some of our high schools are under that. Well, all of them are just under that. A couple of them are just under it by a couple hours. They do offer engagement time, which may count towards that. It's not written in the rule again because the rule is waived for the 990 hours. Went and looked at other districts, as you request, that have a later start time. And I think the biggest, there's 2 here that we want to just talk. One is Salt Lake, our neighbor to the north. I think they have switched their schedules with elementary and high school. So their elementaries do start first, basically from 8 to 2:30. They do have a couple that start at 8:40. I believe those may just be walking schools. So they may, they do have a couple schools that do not have busing because they're so compact there. Their middle schools start at the same time. So their middle schools are 7, 8, and 9. Ours are 5, 6, 7, and 8. So a little bit different grade difference there. Their high schools do start later at the 8:45 last. Okay. That is, last year was their first year of doing that. So when I talked to them, they said, hey, we really don't have any data on assessments, on student behaviors, on tardiness, on missing periods, things of that nature. So they were going to start accumulating that, but have not done so as of yet. Washington County also looked at them and talked with them through emails. They're interesting. They said they really don't consider this a late start, but this is what they've had, and that's been in progress there for well over a decade, maybe even longer. They're somewhat tiered like us. Their intermediate schools actually go first. So keep in mind they have 4 levels down there: K through 5 in elementary, intermediate is 6 and 7, then 8 through 12. Or 8 and 9 are middle schools, and then 10, 11, and 12 are high schools. So their intermediate schools start first, basically around the same time as ours, in that 7:45 range. Then they go to their high schools. They really don't consider it a late start, but It is a little bit later than ours. They start at 8:15. See what time they get out. Then they'd have their elementaries starting after that. So again, they set their busing for the high schools and middle schools because they do share the same bus. The buildings are right next to each other. So they do 12th graders on the same bus with usually a common pickup point. So they bus them all together. They set those based on their extracurricular activities times, and then formulate the other busing around that, if you will. Of course, they're a little bit warmer, maybe a little bit late daylight. It's a little bit longer. That's for their extracurricular, but that's how they have formulated theirs. And again, been in process well over maybe even a couple decades, but they said, we really can't go back and find a point in time to measure assessments or anything like that because we've been doing it for so long. Just looking at Washington and ours achievement data, we've just pulled RISE and ACT from last year. And as we talked, Hal and I, we would be very cautious not to measure one measuring point here because you could have 5 other things. You could have smaller class sizes. You could have technology supports. You could have coaching supports. You could have various other things that curriculum that could play a role in any of changes up or down for this. You can see ours are on the most part for the 8th grade. Again, their 8th grade is starting a little bit later than our 8th graders. Okay. Again, they're starting at 8:15. Our 8th graders starting that. Mount Jordan starts at 7:30. The others between 7:50 and 7:50 and 8:05. Indian Hills is the only one at 8:05. You can also see so we're a little bit higher in those areas. Again, many things could factor into that. And also you can see the ACT. Some of the areas are a little bit higher. Some of ours were a little bit higher overall. We're slightly higher on the overall composite, but pretty close there as well. So again, the presentation from the September 6th meetings on board docs, I think it still goes back to, we'd like, if you wanted us to proceed, we'd like the parameters of, and then try to build around that. If you'd like to give us that. And then you can see the cost again, whatever parameters, we're looking at $40,000. We think it would take us from what they've told us, it take us to the end of December for them to do it. Then we could bring stuff back in January, February, early next year. So that's all the information I have, but happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you. Board questions or comments, requests for additional information? Mr. Milleberg?
Mr. Wilcox, just a quick, easy, simple question. As you look at the Salt Lake City School District and Washington County School District, did you crunch any numbers or did they publish any numbers as far as the 990 rule is concerned?
They're basically on the same. So
I didn't really compute time in.
So they're you can see they're bell to bell. Salt Lake is 6 hours and 30 minutes. That is actually less than ours. Now they do get out early, have early out Fridays. I'm assuming their lunch is probably 30 minutes like ours or 35. Again, that varies. And the passing time is probably the same. So I don't see how they getting to the 990, but I didn't ask specifically on either one yet.
Close, but maybe not quite there.
Probably not. Okay. And you can see Washington County. Again, the same 6 hours, 30 minutes. High school bell to bell. And they also have an early out Friday. So Washington County does not have a tech center. They are building one. So how that figures into their plans, I'm not investing in transporting. I'm not sure. Salt Lake has one. I guess it's quite a bit smaller than ours. So they do a shuttle. I'm not sure if they have the 2 sessions like we have though.
Do you anticipate that 990 rule to be enforced in the future?
I don't know. I'm gonna give the lawyer answer since we've heard from two of them. Depends, right? I kind of
Definite maybe.
definite maybe.
Okay.
Maybe others have an opinion. I could see it not coming back. Yeah, that's a possibility.
Thank you. Mrs. Nybauer?
Thank you for the presentation. I was so interested that our ACT scores are so similar within 0.2 and 1 or 0.4%. Very interesting. I did notice when you listed the high schools with Washington County School District that one of their schools that they're including is their online school, the Utah online from 7th to
Yeah.
12th.
For the ACTs.
For the ACT, yes. And we didn't include our online. Is that right?
Ours is not a dedicated online like theirs is, so it's completely different. Theirs is a standalone high school. Ours kids are enrolled in the regular school, so it's
So our kids that do Canyons online are still associated with a school and they're included.
so they're included. They'd be included in
The
the Corner
partner school.
Canyon and Brighton.
Okay, perfect. That was my question. Thank you for putting this together.
Thank you. Additional, Mr. Wrigley?
Just a couple. I mean, 990 rule. I would hate to spend as much money as you suggested and then have them change it right after and then have to do it over again. But I think the reason they put the 990 rules is I think this was basically for seat time, that they wanted to have the seat time. So if we go less than 990, we're basically scrunching down the seat time for our kids so they can have a different adjusted time on coming. I don't know what that is. I did learn this week that our middle schools and our high schools have different times that they'll start. We knew that, but that's affecting their PLCs. So as we do a study, we really need to figure, like they've done here, all of our schools to start at the same time if possible. They're 20 minutes difference, which affects the collaboration between our schools right now, because our PLCs, they're on the same contract time, but their start times start different, which means their PLC times are different, which is affecting our time for PLC. So it'd be nice if
probably
we
want to
actually have
try
a
to
standard time.
True that up for the singletons.
Yeah, I mean, so if we have all of our middle schools and all of our high schools, it'd be nice to start at the same time. If we're going to do that study so that we maximize the PLC time, which we just approved or whatever. Have you had a chance yet, or maybe if you bring it back again to talk with the principals? My concern is get some input from them regarding how late can we go before they're going to start seeing kids leave for work, going to start seeing kids go for athletic activities. And I understand in the morning, how late can the buses come if we're going to have some early morning programs like jazz programs and other stuff. I think before the schools have ran their buses early enough, the kids could get there, I believe, or not.
So I have not talked to any principals. We could easily reach out to them. A couple schools have what they call, Corner Canyon has charger time. Alta has called engagement time. From basically 7:05, 7:10 till the bell, first bell rings. So a half hour there. The buses are there with these kids again. 10-15% of the student body population of these schools ride the bus, right? So the teachers are there, they're on contract time, can work with students at that time. And of course, students who don't ride the bus can come and do that as well. So that is part of their engagement.
It would be really interesting to talk with the principals and get some of the ins and outs, what they may be thinking for the middle schools and the high schools, just to get their input regarding situations we may want to put in this report. We don't want to have the buses coming so late that other kids are there, could be there early if they drive, and be going so late that we could have so many kids leaving. Be interesting to find out what Salt Lake is doing with their time out, even just now. What's their attendance? I mean, how many kids are leaving early because they're having to work, and how many kids are leaving because of sports? We may get them there later, but they may actually have less seat time. And I think we're concerned about their hours that they're sleeping, but we're also concerned about their academic level. And we're also concerned about our ACT scores and our RICE scores and all the other stuff that reflects upon the district. And if we don't have enough seat time, all those numbers will go down, which reflects negatively against the district.
The one thing is I talked to my counterpart there at Salt Lake. He So, that is a concern. Again, it's important to realize this is just their second year, so they don't really have any data. He says he has heard ancillary comments about the athletic time because, when their teams play teams from Canyons or Granite, they are missing probably some more seat time because they are, the games, the afternoon games times have not changed, and nor will they. And I'm almost sure they won't change for us as well, so that could be a problem on seat time.
Let's see. I think anyone else? Mrs. Show?
So I think I suggested this last time, but I suggested maybe we do a survey of some kind. I don't know how my other board members feel about that. But I know in Salt Lake District, they actually decided as a board they were going to do it first. Then they went out to the public and got the feedback. So I don't know if we'd want to do that or if we just want to go with the bus study and see what happens. There's just different ways that we could go with this. And I would just again say, if we do this study, which I'm in favor of doing a study, do not have high schools go earlier because that happened last time and teachers and parents were not happy.
Yeah, that's why we'd want some parameters saying what's the earliest? Is it 7:45? Is it 8? Is it 8:15? What's the time you would, the latest, both the earliest and the latest you would like?
Okay.
Maybe a little range there to start, but yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, Mrs. Oaks?
Okay, so this is really helpful to compare apples to apples. Thank you for gathering the data from the other districts. I am definitely leaning towards having a survey. It's interesting. Washington County and Salt Lake school districts times are not that much different. I guess I was expecting more of a difference, but it's not that significant of a change compared to what we currently have. It looks like in the case of Washington County, you really keep the middle school time, but it's flipped for the high school and the elementaries. Is that correct? Which is that was a piece of feedback from my community where people were interested what that would look like. I don't know if it would cause mayhem for everybody. But I think that that's something that we would specifically want to see in a study of how that would go down. I have received some feedback from constituents since the last meeting, and where the question was, if you start high schools later, that means they start their sports after school later, which means they go to bed later, which means they get less sleep. So it's a question of, do you get less sleep on the back end or the front end? And I thought that was an interesting question, and I hadn't thought of it before. So anyway, something to consider. I know for certain, I agree with Amber, no matter what happens with the survey, we definitely need to push it out to the community and get their feedback, because there might be a lot of people who are fairly content, and I don't think we want to upset the apple cart just to appease a small number of people. So we need to make sure that there's consensus behind it if we're going to move forward on it.
I think, we did a small sample survey, if you remember, this past spring, just, the two middle schools, Draper Park and Mount Jordan, and affected elementaries. I think that data seemed to come back that, they seemed to like what they had, I think, but obviously we could.
Well, but to your point, Leon, I think what wasn't asked was what happens if you move the elementaries earlier and the high schools later, right? It was a little bit of a different question that was being asked of the community. And I think that's why it's interesting to look at this and say, okay, if we were to flip that based off of the fact that the circadian rhythms of the children seem to fit that kind of a pattern better, what would it look like? Anyway.
Okay. Additional thoughts or questions? And then I have a few too. I think everyone's out of turn, but we'll go back, Mrs. Neubauer, and then Mr. Wrigley again. And then I've got some questions.
I apologize. I thought we were just commenting on the first part of the presentation, and then you were going to go through your other two attachments. Then I realized you were not going to. So I also really agree that a survey is a good idea, and I think it would also be helpful when we're gathering feedback from principals to have them run it by their school community councils for the additional feedback to make sure we're utilizing the school community councils. I think it's important to note that as we looked at our staggering schedules, that we do have slightly different minutes per schools. And so, not all of them, as we know, there's 10, 15-minute differences. So I also like the idea that Steve mentioned about coordinating the PLCs and just trying to get a more standardized schedule. So we can, with our PLCs, we can, go between different schools with those PLCs or linear up to the high school or elementary. I think it's also important that when we're looking at this with seat time, Hattie has the 252 influence rankings that affect student achievement and that engagement. There's a lot of research that shows 10 minutes less than school a day and all these other things with levels of engagement can really make a difference with student achievement. So just wanted to point that out. And then lastly, I just wanted to point out that we may want to talk to our counselors as well. As I have gone and talked to our school counselors, a lot of them do say that sleep patterns, we're talking about, Miss Oaks mentioned, that maybe some parents were thinking, oh, well, if sports start later, then kids sleep later. And the counselors I've talked to would support that idea that adolescents tend to be more wired in the evening and more sleepy in the morning. And a lot of the negative teen behaviors and some of the mental health issues. I was just talking to a parent the other day that said, it is such a struggle getting my daughter out of bed. She struggles with anxiety. She struggles with this and that. And that early morning is really rough. So it might be a good idea to talk to our counselors as far as this may be a step in the right direction to help some of those kids that are suffering that way. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Wrigley?
So I could probably support a survey, but it needs to be very limited. And we need to be sure that we ask questions that we can deliver on. When we asked our last survey, the elementaries wanted to go earlier, and the middle schools wanted to go later, and the high schools wanted to go later, and feasibly we couldn't do it. So we have to be very careful. We're not asking questions that we're not going to be able to do. So as we do that, to take a look at that. I mean, and Michelle said before, when we did the other survey, people said, well, I don't want to go 15 minutes either way. So we probably need to have that information because we may be saying, oh yeah, let's go 9 o'clock. And people are going, I'm not going to go 15 minutes through that. So it'd be interesting, pull all this information in, then come back and we could probably then craft something, but there seems to be quite a bit of open questions. I don't want to spend a lot of money on a survey and time of everybody to find out that we're not going to implement it like we did the last time.
Okay, thank you. I too kind of feel like I still need more information, and a lot of it has to do with how does our public, generally the larger public, feel about this? Because as I look through things, just kind of generality, I'm not a bus scheduler, and the level of detail with the measuring the minutes and all of that, it can get a little bit mind blowing. But as I looked at it right now, we have about an hour and a half from when first school starts to when the last school starts. So in my mind, just logistically, we probably need to have about that same hour and a half, regardless of who goes first, which school goes first or last, and if we shift everything, if we just shift everything later or what. So just, it seems to me that, and I'm fine if we want to go forward with a survey, but I almost feel like we should get a survey of our public first on these general ideas. Would you be okay with elementary school starting at 7:30 or 7:40 in the morning? And which would allow secondary schools to then start at 8 or even up to 9 o'clock in the morning. Just kind of those general ideas, thinking that our busing is going to be the same depending on which order it is. right? And or just shifting everybody 30 minutes later. I don't know. Those were just some ideas that I had, but I just feel like we need to be careful and not get in front of our public on this by kind of maybe as a board committing to something and then having to pull back a little bit if it's not really what our patrons want. So those are just a couple of my thoughts and ideas. Additional, Mr. Milliberg.
Yeah, just a couple of thoughts. I think it sounds nice to have the kids get more sleep. Off the top, I don't know if they'd get more sleep or not if they just stay up later at night. But you know we can argue that one all day long. My concern is if we shift everything a little bit later, that may work well if you've got a very affluent family or a family that has one parent working. But if you've got a couple of people in the workforce and it gets later, there's, a real feeling of security of getting your kids out of the house to school before you go to work. And I know that not all of them fit that right now, but I think that exacerbates the issue a little bit to move them later. And so I think you need to start looking, not just in certain areas, but we need to start looking by community and see what communities would like to have happen. And I know that just messes everything up, that you want to have as much uniformity as possible. But I really think that this later start would mess with some communities pretty badly. And so I'll go back to what Nancy said. I think we need to look and find out what families in our district really want. That to me is the key issue, is what families want.
Thank you. Superintendent, do you have comments?
Sure. Thank you, President T. Just a couple of things. I think, every comment's valid that's been made. I think it's important to recognize the obvious, that the correlation with sleep is really valid only if kids actually go to bed earlier and get more sleep, right? And we can't enforce that. There's no way for us to, make that the rule. Hopefully that's what would occur. I also think the high school issue is probably more poignant than we really understand. Our high schools are in 2 different classifications in 3 different regions currently. So to the issue in Salt Lake School District, unlike Washington, where they're in a single region with only 2 other schools that are in the region that they can control the schedule, I think that's going to become problematic with how much time our students are out of school, especially in our high schools. I think too, just in terms of, as we talked earlier about where this fits in priorities, and I think it's a structural change that not just, affects families, but our employees and our teachers and our staff. I mean, this is a major, major disruption. Not that it can't be positive, but we have 3 major initiatives already underway this year. And I don't know which committee it fits best with, maybe high quality learning or operations. It kind of crosses over in both, but to continue to study it there. I think to Steve's point, to maybe wait and see with what the state does with 990. I mean, there's a lot out there right now, being talked about when it comes to learner validation and how schools are even tracking attendance altogether in relation to the effects the pandemic has had. So I think in my opinion, it may be a little premature even to have that discussion yet until we get some guidance on where the legislature and our state board wants to go with it. But I agree. I think all the studies are clear that more sleep can be a positive thing. But I think there's some variables that are still out there that are probably premature to fully understand moving this forward. So I would recommend we move it to at least maybe one of those committees or those 2 and study it there, at least for the remainder of this year.
Thank you. Board thoughts? Mrs. Neubauer?
Just a few thoughts. I don't know that I think that kids would go to sleep earlier. I just think they wouldn't wake up as early. I And I think that, you know, teenagers, we have teenagers that get home with both parents working. They may get home at 2 p.m, or now on Fridays, they get home at 12:50. It's a lot of time without supervision, and a lot of our teens are making good, healthy choices, but not all of them are. I feel a little more confident as a mother that I can pretty much guarantee that if high school started 45 minutes later in the morning, my teen would be sleeping, wouldn't probably be causing problems. So as far as the work issue and parents getting to work, I understand that. I think right now, I mean, we have elementary schools that start at 9 or 8:50 or 8:55. So we kind of have the gamut right now. When Ms. Tingy was talking about options for the survey, I feel personally, if you have an elementary starting at 9 and we're saying, hey, would you like to go to 7:40? That's too big of a change. Like an hour, over an hour change. I would just like, when we look at the survey, that we have some options that would maybe be a little more feasible for adjustment's sake, that we wouldn't go any more than like an hour or even 40 minutes, because I feel that may be hard. So I am in favor of looking at this and doing a survey. And if we need to have a committee take a closer look at how that survey is formed, I'm in favor of that as well. Other thoughts?
So I've heard a suggestion that we take this discussion and assign it to one of our strategic plan committees, and perhaps it was suggested either high quality learning or the operations one, and I really feel like operations might be the better fit, because we are talking about kind of schedules and running things, and also public communications, which that's part of the operations. And maybe the first thing that committee would do would be to draft some potential survey questions or items to be covered in a survey. Any other thoughts on that, or Mrs. Schill?
I like the idea of assigning it to a committee, and I mean, I didn't know the superintendent was going to say that, obviously, tonight. But I do think there's some wisdom in what he just said. We do have, I mean, we're still recovering from COVID. I mean, we've had our teachers come and say how they're just so overwhelmed. And families are still just getting back to normal after COVID. And maybe it is better to wait. But I'm okay with assigning this to a committee and having them start to research that and work on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or any? Okay, so is everyone all right if we go ahead and turn this conversation for now over to Operations Committee? Is that all right? Okay. No, it's not really a formal action. We're just, as a board, determining the next step for this conversation. So, all right. Thank you very much, Mr. Wilcox. We appreciate that. So that concludes the items for tonight's meeting under new business. And we will now turn time over for staff comments. I'll start with Superintendent Robbins and then Mr. Wilcox.
Thank you, President. I'll be brief. Today or this week is IT professional week or day. And I just want to give a shout out and thanks to our IT folks, all that are here that support us and throughout the district. I think we've said this before, and we know this, that they are such a major play a major role in providing the backbone to the district when it comes to our technology. And you think about the number of clients that are actually on our system every day, even over the last few years, and how that's increased exponentially. It just is a major tribute to their innovation and their ability to work at breakneck speed to keep us up and running and being able to do the jobs that we need to do and to keep our students and families connected. So I know Scott McCombs isn't here, but just a shout out to him, his leadership, his team, and all of our IT professionals in the district. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilcox.
Yes, thank you. Just two things. I just want to, Principal Celine Elsina came from Granite came and she mentioned the shortage of paraprofessionals. We know that's a problem right now. We certainly appreciate everybody who's working in that role for us right now. Right today, well, for the last couple weeks and moving forward, we've had a sign-up sheet where 6 people from the district office have to sign up to go over to support Jordan Valley every day. If they're not needed, they can come back. But we appreciate Stacy Knopfsinger leading Jordan Valley through our shortage that we're going through there. We appreciate Nate Edelson for his leadership in our special ed department, trying to get as many people as we can. Steve and his team as well, trying to recruit, do everything we can to try to get a few more parapros. So we hope anybody listening, we're in need, and we hope you come consider working for us. So I think it's a great career, and we're grateful for those who are here with us now. And also, Rick and I meet on a regular basis with our associations. Kathy Smith from the CEA is here. But we do appreciate meeting with both our ESP and our CEA memberships monthly. It gives us a good pulse of some of the concerns going on. So we've met with them over the last 2 weeks. Appreciate the concerns that they bring to us each month that we can address as a team and try to make things better for our employees. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll give a few minutes to each board member for a quick report. Are we, I can't remember where we started last time, but we'll start with Mrs. Schill.
Okay, so Nancy and I were able to attend an event that was put on by Cottonwood Heights City, and it was really nice. They invited all the teachers of the year for the schools that are in Cottonwood Heights and read a little vignette about each teacher that we read at Teacher of the Year, and then gave them a little gift. And we also took some pictures, and it was just really nice. I think the teachers appreciated it. It was just short, and it was a great event. So I just want to recognize our city for doing that. And then I've just been able to attend a lot of football games for our high schools, and they have just been so fun. They're really truly like a community event. I mean, I see all sorts of parents that don't even have kids at the school that are there. And I mean, the stands are packed and everyone's just having a fun time. And I just appreciate our schools and how they bring our communities together. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Mrs. Neibauer?
I've really enjoyed the school events I've attended. I'm going to go a different direction tonight. I actually had pulled up Ms. Stark's email to us for my closing comments, and then I saw her here at Patron Comments, and my heart really went out to our teachers as she wrote to us. Not only the 3 new curriculums in the last few years, but this list I'd like to read. Here are just some of the things we're expected to do daily, weekly. Kid talk meetings, parent phone calls, behavior data tracking, behavior data input committees, work for absent student, work for vacation students, Canvas, letters assignments, letters platform, data tracking, data recording, outside duty, content creating, CFAs, PLC agendas, planning, grading, weekly parent communication, email parent square, behavior management, contracts, SICO, copies, team meetings, learning intentions, objectives written on board daily, PBIS, and then also IEP meetings, speech meetings, report cards, SEPs, conference prep, CTS, ESS, CTESS, portfolio, professional development subplans for the PDs. I know Canyon School District is amazing, and I know we require a lot of our teachers. And as we're heading into parent-teacher conference, and I think of our sweet teachers and all the work and effort and long hours of that included, and I see this list, I really appreciated what she's asking of us. She's just asking that the 30 minutes before school and the 30 minutes after school, we can give a priority of 2 to 3 things. that's most important for them to do. And as I read her letter and her intent, I can tell it's because she wants to do everything just right, but it feels probably sunk at the end of the day that she can't get to everything. And I know each of these things, Dr. Robbins could probably talk about how important each of these things are, and I know they are, but I just think maybe we can put our heads together at some point here soon as we have these teachers that their workload seems so heavy. There's something we've got to be able to do to help them. And I appreciate all the time and effort they take. And every time I go to parent teacher conferences and I look at these teachers and all the great things they're doing as they meet with us and go through all the data, I appreciate them and just think, what can we do to simplify a little bit for them or prioritize? And thank you to all of them for educating our kids. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Wrigley?
Mrs. Nybar and I are on the same page on this. I think and I've said this before, we probably need to take a look at what's value added and what's 20% of the things we do give us 80% results, especially as we look into the future from a possible difficult time. So we've got a lot of great initiatives and maybe they're not all equal. And maybe we take a look at what those may be. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Oaks?
Thanks. I echo your sentiments over here with regard to Ms. Stark's comments. It made me think a great deal too to read her email and to hear her tonight. I want to give a shout out to our PTA for hosting two awesome Meet the Candidates events last week. It was a wonderful opportunity for people to come from all over the community and meet people for all sorts of different offices. They're so great about promoting community engagement and connection, and that was a wonderful opportunity. I also wanted to give a shout out to both Susan Edwards and to Sharice for our parent canyoneering night that was held at Alta a couple weeks ago, and that was a wonderful event. There was fantastic information, and the discussions that we had in those classes were great. It was wonderful to see parents, a lot of times both sets of parents coming to see how they can effectively support their student. And finally, Mont and I had the opportunity to attend a really meaningful event on Saturday, which I thought was a very fitting, it was amazing, and it was a fitting thing to do on a Constitution Day. But we got to go in and be part of the unveiling of the Gold Store Memorial dedication in Sandy. And I know Susan and Sharice have both had a lot of interaction with that. They've been on the committee for that. But for those of you who don't know what a Gold Star family is, it's anyone who has lost a member of their family while they were in their military service. And these memorials, which are going up all over the community, South Jordan unveiled one a week or two ago, were really, really touching. And it was amazing to hear each of these families come and by name identify their family member that they lost, their title and rank, the date that they passed, and where they were. And you could feel how raw that loss was and the significance of the sacrifice they've made. And I just really credit Sandy City for making that a priority. It's in a beautiful spot where the community will be able to come and remember and consider that sacrifice. And I just felt so blessed to be able to be a part of that whole experience. So anyway.
Thank you. Mr. Milliberg?
Yeah, Amanda, that was an amazing experience. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. Share with you a little bit of my travelogue over the last couple of weeks. On Sunday, the 11th day of September, I went with my family, with the grandkids, to the Sandy Healing Field and observed all the flag setup. An amazing thing to just sit there and look at that many flags. As we're walking through, my wife said, "Isn't that Susan over there?" And I said, "Yeah, my gosh, that is." And so walked over and chatted with Susan, and she was talking about the dedication will be coming the following week for the Gold Star Family Memorial. And then we walked down and she showed me another monument on the Sandy City Hall campus. And it is a monument for the armed forces of the United States. And there are essays that are written by school children on the memorial. And as closely as I can remember, the topic for the essay is what is the cost of freedom? And I walked around and read some of the essays that were written, and they were just amazing. Coming some from grade school kids all the way up through high school kids. And it really, really touched my heart to see what the kids thought about the cost of freedom and what the value of being free is. Also observing that of the essays that were there, none were written by Canyon students. And so that kind of touched me maybe in the wrong way. So that was at Sunday. Following Friday, last Friday, we celebrated Constitution Day. Dr. Dowdle, thank you for making a push and making that happen. I really appreciate it. I went up to Hillcrest High School and checked in with Principal Levitt. And then he and I walked upstairs and upstairs and upstairs. And we attended a couple of history classes. In both classes, they showed the video produced by Canyon School District on the Constitution, separation of or balance of whatever that's called. The checks and balance in the United States government. They went through the executive, the congressional, and the judicial parts of government. And then both teachers opened it up for discussion. Can I tell you how pleasantly surprised I was at how conversant our high school students were? So the teacher talked about the Constitution as they've moved into the Bill of Rights, and then as they talked about the amendments to the Constitution after the Bill of Rights, and how conversant the kids were. They were just absolutely amazing. And the one teacher, not that it really matters, but he gave us a fun way to remember what the number of the amendment is for prohibition. Does anybody know what amendment prohibition is? What is it? No, 18. And what was the amendment of the Constitution that did away with prohibition? 21. And so if you're 18, it says you can't drink. When you're 21, you can. I just thought that was fun. Moving on to Saturday, the Gold Star Family Memorial that was dedicated. I can't believe the work, the involvement that Susan Edwards and Cherise Hilton had on that. It was just amazing. I've got a soft spot in my heart for the military. We have been fortunate not to be on the list of names that would be a Gold Star family. We've not lost anybody. But there is a real sense of honor and pride for the military in my family. As I was leaving that day, I was walking across the street by the Sandy City campus, and a gentleman came up wearing the full dress uniform of the United States Marine Corps, had his captain bars on his shoulder, and I just stopped for a minute and thanked him for the service that he had rendered, and we started talking a little bit, and I told him, I said, I grew up in the late 60s. graduated from high school in 68. When we got out of high school, we registered with the selective service system. And a couple of years after I got out of high school, they drew what they called the first lottery, and you were assigned a draft number. And that draft number determined whether or not you would be drafted. I was in a foreign country at the time the first one was drawn, and I hit the jackpot. I drew number 26, which means as soon as I got home, I was draft bait. That's probably not a good term, but that's what we called it. And we talked about what the state of the country was with a drafted army and non-volunteer army compared to now. He made a statement to me that meant so much. That my generation, we were compelled to serve. The generation now has a choice to serve. And how much those who choose not to serve, those who do serve, because they are literally standing at our stead, serving in the military to protect our country, making it available for us and our children not to have to serve. And that just went right to my core. And most grateful for those gentlemen and for those women that are serving in the United States military. So it was kind of a fun time going through the Constitution Day and 9/11 and the dedication of the Gold Star Memorial. So it's been a great couple of weeks.
Thank you. I just want to echo some of the comments about the IT team here at Canyons District. I was thinking about how the work that they do really is unseen, but they are heroic in that often they save us in our time of extreme need. And when emergencies arise, they're there. And even not only to those of us here in the room, but to anyone that's currently watching this board meeting or will watch it at a future date, it's thanks to our IT team for figuring it out and making it happen. And we just, I just want to express that appreciation and thank all of you for being here and for the board for your great work today. And unless there's anything else, Superintendent.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a final comment too in relation to Mon's comments and thank all of our families that have served and have lost someone that, this last year. That's been unfortunately a theme in the district that we've dealt with. And Susan and our team just have partnered. It's been great to see the partnership with our cities and our communities in recognizing and honoring these warriors and their service to our nation. And we've been talking with Sandy City, and I'm hopeful that we can get a partnership and do or be part of the essays that are there. And I'm hopeful that we can do that maybe in the superintendent awards in the spring, in hosting, those essays and then choosing some to push forward to potentially be displayed there within the district. So, I really want us to have that representation, and where that's within our district, we should. So that's the right thing to do. So I just wanted to make that comment and thank you all for your comments tonight.
Thank you, Superintendent. Appreciate that. Anything else, anyone? All right, I will adjourn the meeting. And again, thank you all for being here.